and welcome to this episode of John's Motorcycle Rescue and Review. Alright guys, I am super excited to be reviewing Kawasaki's 2017 through 2019 Z900. I purchased this bike recently and I have gone through it from front to back and serviced it and made sure that it is ready to go for this review. This particular bike is a 2019 model and it has some nice features on it. It features a little bit higher windscreen on it, as well as 35mm bar risers. It does have the bar end mirrors on it. It also has a gel seat for longer distance comfort. And one of the most notable things that this bike has is a full SC Project performance exhaust on it. In this video, I'll give a little bit of the history of the Z900. I'll also go over the specs on the bike and the performance figures on the bike. And in a little bit, I'm going to gear up. I'll bring the camera along and we will go out and see what this bike is like to ride out on the road. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that. If you like great motorcycle related content and you want to help support this channel, you might want to consider becoming a member. Depending on the level of membership, members get additional bonus features such as early access to new videos and bonus content on this channel. And your support will help me continue to make good quality motorcycle content for you to enjoy. Looking at the history of the Z900, in 2017 in the US, Kawasaki replaced the Z800 and the Z1000 with the new Z900 model. The Z900 is really Kawasaki's answer to the Yamaha FZ09, which later became the MT09. As such, the Z900 was designed to a budget. When I first saw this, I was a little bit concerned because on paper, the Z900 is a little bit less powerful than the Z1000. It also features less sophisticated suspension components. The Z900 also lost the radial mounted brakes of the Z1000. I've ridden multiple versions of the Z1000. I'm very familiar with that bike, and so I'm curious to see how the Z900 compares with that bike and compares with the FZ09 as we're riding. Looking at the specs on the Z900, the engine is a 948cc liquid-cooled inline 4-cylinder. It features 4 valves per cylinder and fuel injection. It has an 11.8:1 compression ratio, and it is fed by 4 36mm downdraft throttle bodies. One thing to note here is that these are cable actuated, and this is not a fly-by-wire system. The frame on the Z900 is a steel trellis type frame, similar to the frame on the H2. The engine acts as a stressed member of the new frame, and the lighter frame in combination with lighter wheels and a lighter swing arm make the Z900 46 pounds lighter than the Z800 that it replaces. The wet weight on the Z900 is 463 pounds, and it's about 10 pounds more with the ABS version. The Z900 features a low 31.3-inch seat height. Fuel capacity is 4.5 gallons. The transmission is a slick shifting 6-speed transmission with a slipper type clutch, and this is mated to chain final drive. In the suspension department, out front, the Z900 has 41mm inverted KYB forks. These feature preload and rebound damping adjustment, and they offer 4.7 inches of travel. Out back, there's a single KYB shock, and it features spring preload and rebound damping adjustment as well. Rear suspension travel is 5.5 inches. In the braking department, up front there are dual disc brakes. These are the pedal type brakes, and they are acted on by 4-piston Nissin calipers. Out back is a single disc brake with a dual piston caliper acting on that. On the Z900, ABS is optional. Instrumentation on the Z900 consists of a liquid crystal display. It has a large tack that sweeps around the outside. One nice feature here is that the tack has a programmable shift light. The display also includes a gear indicator, a temp gauge, a fuel gauge, the odometer, and the clock. Looking at the performance of the Z900, at the rear wheel, the Z900 puts out about 115 horsepower at 9,700 RPM. It also puts out 68 foot-pounds of torque at 7,000 RPM. In comparison to its direct rival, the Z900 makes about 10 horsepower more at the rear wheel than the FZ09. It also makes about 10 foot-pounds more of torque at the rear wheel. Top speed on the Z900 is 145 miles an hour. All right, enough talk. What is the Z900 like to ride? I'm going to gear up, I'll bring the camera along, Let's find out together. Let's ride.
I am currently riding Kawasaki's Z900. This bike is Kawasaki's answer to the Yamaha FZ09. Since this bike effectively replaced both the Z800 and the Z1000 motorcycles, I was a little bit concerned as a longtime Kawasaki Z1000 fan that Kawasaki would have lost something in the translation, going to a little bit less displacement on this bike. And I'm thankful to say that this bike really pulls nicely. It definitely feels like a leader class machine. Even though this bike is called the Z900, it has a 948cc engine, so it's really closer to a 950, and it's a very quick revving motor. It picks up steam very nicely, and even in top gear, it accelerates very, very quickly. No need for a downshift. And this bike is so light and nimble. Oh yeah. Weight-wise, I don't think there's much difference between this bike and the Z650. Yeah, that definitely has stout performance. As I'm sure you can hear, that pipe makes quite a bit of noise. I always ride with earplugs in, so it's not really bothersome to me. The liquid crystal display on this bike is easy to read at a glance. I like the fact that it has the big tack up top where you can see it. Shifting on this bike is very, very nice. It goes very smoothly through the gears. One area where this bike really shines over the FZ09 and MT09 models is it has much firmer suspension, and so this bike is always very, very well controlled. I always know exactly what my front end is doing, and especially on the earlier FZ09s, that was always just a huge question mark. And when I rode those bikes, they have more of a big dirt bike feel to them than they do a sport bike feel. And and this bike is just so precise. The trade-off is this bike does ride a little bit more firmly. Yeah, that just has serious performance on tap. That's fun. Another area where the Z900 has a major advantage over the FZ09 is in the fueling and the throttle response. The Z900 does not have power modes, but it has a direct cable linkage to the throttle bodies, and you can immediately feel the crispness of the throttle. And when you hit the throttle, it does exactly what you're expecting it to do. There's no delay. And one of the biggest complaints on the FZ09 is the very abrupt throttle response, especially when you're in the power mode. Even in the regular mode or B mode, it's a bit on the abrupt side. And so especially mid-corner, when you're going to open the bike up, that is where a precise throttle really comes in handy. And it contributes to the excellent handling on the Z900. There's very little driveline lash on this bike, so it doesn't jerk around when you're going on and off throttle. The brakes on the Z900 are definitely adequate for the weight of the bike and the power of the bike. Although this bike makes great power throughout the rev range, you can tell it really gets serious at about 6,000 RPM, and it pulls all the way up to redline. And it's just a revelation how light and easy this bike is to ride. The Z1000 that this really reminds me of the most is the first generation Z1000. I really like that bike for a lot of the same reasons I like this bike. It felt very lightweight. It was very easy to ride. It had plenty of power, and it was very easy to modulate in the lower RPM range. If I had to sum up the ride of this motorcycle in a couple of words, it would really be a low-effort motorcycle. This bike will do anything you want it to. It is very precise in the handling. It's not super picky on shift points. It always feels very lightweight. I think the Z900 would just make a great commuter motorcycle. The Z900 is also an exciting bike to ride. Kawasaki has done a great job of maintaining the excitement of riding this bike. Although this exhaust is a little bit on the loud side, I have to say I love the tone. I like this small windshield that's on this bike. It definitely gives you a little bit of wind protection at the highway speeds. Naked bikes are always going to be somewhat windy at highway speeds, but on hot days like today, it's nice to get the airflow. Comfort-wise, this Z900 fits me very nicely. It's a little bit short on legroom, although that doesn't typically bother me. I'm 6'4", so I'm definitely on the tall side for this bike. I do really appreciate the handlebar risers on this bike. It has 35mm risers, and it puts the handlebars in a very neutral, right at hand position. And so for me, this is definitely long-term comfortable. The seat on this bike has a gel insert in it, and it's also seeming to be comfortable for a longer ride. I've been out for about 40 minutes now, and I don't have any discomfort on the bike really whatsoever. Transmission on this bike is a very slick shifting transmission. It goes up and down through the gears very precisely. Kawasaki does one of the best shifting transmissions currently available, and this one is no exception. This shifts so nicely. When I was younger, the sport bikes were definitely the way to go if you wanted any kind of real performance, and you really didn't get into the performance standards until you had the Suzuki Bandit and the Kawasaki ZRX and the Yamaha FZ9. One really nice positive about the performance naked type of motorcycle is that you can really rip it up when you want to. You can really hit the corners hard, and these bikes perform so well in that kind of full out performance segment. And then when you want to just kind of cruise down through or commute or do anything like that, these bikes are so comfortable and competent and really just easy to ride.
Man, what a lot of fun. Well, I'm happy to report my fears that the Z900 would feel cheap or somehow less than the Z1000 really seem unfounded. The 115 horsepower that this bike makes at the rear wheel is certainly plenty for street use. It's a very quick machine. I love the fast revving nature of this motor. I like the smooth power output. I absolutely love the throttle control that I have on this bike. It's so linear and it's so nice, especially when you compare it to the choppy fly-by-wire throttle that's on the FZ09. Now the downside is I don't have multiple power modes for this bike. The upside is I simply don't need them. The throttle is so controllable and so easy to use throughout the rev range that it becomes a non-issue. As I said in the ride portion, the suspension on this bike is much more buttoned down and well controlled and precise feeling than that of the FZ09. And when I ride the Z900, I feel like I'm riding a standard style sport bike. I would absolutely love to take this bike out on the track and see how it does during a track day, but I think this would be just a blast to run around the track. Whereas the Z900 is a bike that really inspires confidence and really allows me to explore the entire performance envelope of it and kind of encourages me to do so. The FZ09 in comparison kind of scares me at points. As I said before, the fueling on the FZ09 is much more abrupt than it is on this bike, and so I'm never quite sure what the throttle is going to do as I open the throttles on that bike. It makes a very choppy on and off throttle. In addition, the softer suspension on the FZ09 leaves it wallowing and leaves me wondering what the front end is doing, and all of that conspires to make me more nervous on the FZ09. And it's a bike that I can enjoy riding, but it's also a bike that I don't really want to push and explore the limits on because I'm never quite sure what the bike is going to do. Spec-wise, this Z900 makes almost the same power and torque figures as the earlier Z1000s did, and I like the earlier Z1000s. I felt like they were not as abrupt on and off throttle as the later Z1000s got. I felt like the Z1000s, that was kind of one of their drawbacks, was they were a little bit abrupt on and off throttle. If I had any complaints with the Z900, it's that the seat for me could be a little bit taller and that would give me a little bit more leg room. Another minor gripe I have is that the brakes on this bike lack a little bit of initial bite. They do have plenty of ultimate power when you really squeeze the lever, but that first little bit of brake travel doesn't do a whole lot. I think a lot of that could be rectified with a little bit more aggressive HH style pads in the front. I think that would help. Another minor gripe that I have with the Z900 is that the firm suspension on this bike is a little bit on the sporty side, and I love the fact that it's very well controlled in the corners, but the downside to that is it can be a little bit bumpy on rougher pavement. But for this type of motorcycle and the type of riding that I do most of the time, I think the suspension is set up just fine. It's just a little bit on the taut side versus the FZ09's dirt bike-like feel. Another Kawasaki that I've recently ridden that is based on the same platform is the Z900 RS. Even though these two bikes are built on the same platform, they really have a different feel to them. I like the styling on the Z900 RS with its retro looks. It also has a taller seat height and it has more room for my legs. It's a little bit taller between the seat and the foot pegs. The suspension on the Z900 RS is also a little bit more on the plush side, but surprisingly, the fueling on the Z900 RS was more abrupt on and off throttle than it is on this Z900. The Z900 makes about 10 horsepower more than the Z900 RS, and riding them back to back, the 900 RS has a more plush feel to it, while the Z900 has a sportier feel to it. The styling on this bike is definitely aggressive, and I think that's what Kawasaki was going for with the intended audience. I really like the fact that Kawasaki has made this bike very entertaining to ride and a little bit edgy, but at the same time, it's very intuitive and very confidence-inspiring to ride. Well, I'd love to know what you guys think. If any of you out there are Z900 fans, please let me know in the comment section below. As always, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, enjoy the ride.